This is Kevin Pruitt interviewing Evan Kubicek for the fourth episode, RisingTideStartups.com. Evan, thanks a lot for joining us tonight.
Absolutely. It's fun.
Appreciate you being here. So give me a little background. Who is Evan Kubicek?
Who is Evan Kubicek? That's the question of the hour. I'm an optimizer. And I was thinking about more kind of the nature of the program is that I love startups. I love entrepreneurs. And over the years, I've truly learned that I'm not one. That doesn't mean that I'm not an entrepreneur and I don't do a lot of entrepreneurial things. But in terms of, I view, for me, entrepreneurship and kind of the role that archetype, I would say, the person that goes out and forges a path for others and creates space and creates jobs. I'm more than just being self-employed, but someone who really creates something that can bear the weight of other people. That's not me. But I am the one that makes those things more profitable, more effective, and the things that I do. So I do a lot of self-employment things that I'll do, particularly in the area of consulting. So that's kind of my background. Studied business, went to school for business, did an MBA right out of college, ran a coffee house all through college with friends, and that's really wrestled with, for me, a social enterprise or business that was focused on doing something good, and what was that line between business and social good or mission, and did it totally wrong, but learned so much in the process, and came out of that, went into missions and everything. I've been married for 16 years now, 4 boys. They've traveled all over the world with us and everything as well. So in general, so I wear a lot of hats, and I wear a lot of hats right now currently as well. But in general, in a nutshell, that's kind of what I do is I come alongside the people that are passionate about something, but don't always know how to put things into the right places or pieces. So that's my general role.
Right. So we've known each other for a few years, and I think you're being a little self-deprecating and saying that you don't have that startup gene, because I've actually seen it put into practice. But yeah, I also would affirm exactly what you said, that it's broader than that. I mean, I've seen you, kind of come alongside people and be kind of the undergird, and I mean, we'll unpack it a little bit more as we go along. But so tell me a little bit about places you've lived, and you said you got 4 boys.
4 boys.
Wow,
my wife
that's a lot of testosterone.
She is amazing. So we've lived a lot of places. So go back to original life plan. Original life plan for me in college was, it kind of goes full circle. My parents were both teachers, educators, and they ended up focusing in special ed. So there's always this idea of maybe I should be a teacher, and then watching their lives and seeing how poor they were. I was like, no, I don't want to be a teacher.
Maybe I can do something else.
I did something else.
Good.
Something to make some money, but still is good. So that must be HR, until I got into college and realized what HR actually entails, at least now. And I realized I don't want to do HR. That looks horrible. So and then running the business, running a coffee house, running a startup, so all through college, with pre Facebook, pre social media days.
Wow.
And no template, no franchise. We literally just said, let's start a coffee house with our friends. It was their vision. So my wife and I just got married. So we just got married that summer. And then that spring, we opened this coffee shop from scratch.
That's the true guerrilla marketing. That's guerrilla marketing before guerrilla was spelled with a U.
We repurposed a Mr. Potato Head costume and turned it into a coffee bean and put a cape on it. So we had a super bean. So Jackson Avenue Coffee was the bean. So just really hands-on everything.
Could you send a picture of that in for the show notes? I'd love to see you in a Mr. Potato Head coffee bean costume.
Oh, it was great. And I was recently married, so I was like, you know what? I have no one else to impress at this point, so I could truly own and just.
It's already
just
over.
Yeah, it was already over. So I fought Papa John's pizza slice at one, like a jousting competition one time in the bean costume. It was great. Anyways, all that opened up the can of worms to be able to say that, the original plan was to go into business, go into HR, and running the coffee house and really getting a passion for just serving people, but still loving business and wrestling with that. The whole plan of the original life plan was being HR director, live in Colorado, because that sounds like a great life, and that never, and give 2 weeks of my life to making a difference outside of work. And that totally got flipped on its head to where I was doing completely opposite, where we just really took our first real vacation, I would say, as a family, after all these years of travel. So over the years, I've been in some form or fashion about 20 different countries over the last 12 years. The longest time as a family was in Nepal and a little bit in Kenya, and that was working with another social entrepreneur company in a different role. It was to some extent, I kind of described that role as it was an HR position on crack. It was being able to really get involved in what I viewed HR should have been, and matching people with the right roles and really developing people in their leadership, and a social impact along with it. But we did with thousands of people, and it was absolutely amazing.
Virtually all over the world.
Yeah, well, no, they were focused in Nepal and Kenya was where the operations of the business were. So it was real clear where we were focused on. But the heart and the passion of the company was to grow to, a million workers, to get as big as we possibly can, have a real notable impact. And while we did that threshold, and they're still working towards it. It's a great company, but to dive in and work with people. I kind of got off track, which I'll do a lot during this podcast. You'll see.
Right.
That's how I teach.
I can bring you back.
I go back to say that, my wife really always had a passion for first, but then it didn't really switch. But I think my fire really got lit running the coffee house through college and really taking stock of, do I want to spend 40, 60 hours a week in a traditional role, or do I want to do something that's really more, at least for in my view, meaningful? And I think I really wrestled with coming out of college. I was still living in a very dichotomist mindset. And running the coffee shop with a dichotomous mindset. Right. There's things that are good and things that are notable for society, and then there's business. And realizing those two things have to come together. Mm-hmm. And we're able to do that, able to pull that off. And it's been a journey. But that's how I view everything. Every role that I'm in, the role that I'm in now, I'm teaching at a couple universities, and it's the same. There's no differentiation for me, mm-hmm. and way that I work.
I can see. I mean, like I said, we've known each other for a number of years. I can see the pieces that have kind of fit together to bring you to the place that you are now. I mean, so I want to drill down a little bit to really this thing that you've been working on within the last, I'm guessing, 12 to 18 months. This CoachK, this coaching kind of consultation. Can you unpack that a little bit for us? How did that come about, and tell us what's going on with that?
Okay. Well, I think it probably would predate a little bit farther back. That so when we first started traveling, working overseas, we partnered with an organization and worked with the organization. But it really goes back to I was having a time of just kind of quiet time in prayer and just talking to God, saying like, what am I supposed to do? Like we did this coffee house thing all through college. It was great, learned a lot. But what's the next season? And I just had a picture in my mind of my wife and I on a mountaintop above, like at the cloud line, like really high up, and just really had this sense in my gut saying like, the whole world is open to you. Like all these nations are open for you in business and whatever that looks like, and to go for it. So that was kind of the impetus to really to go for it. To find business owners that are mission focused. They have an impact goal in mind, but they don't really know how to put it into practice. So to take the things that I've learned from college, from my MBA, from my own coffee house experiences, and all the other business things I picked up along the years, that was how long? That was a while ago, 7 going on 6, 12 years ago, really. That initially that idea was kind of planted. So what I've been doing now is still kind of an outgrowth from that. Although I've kind of taken a more focused approach, which hasn't turned out to be amazingly successful. So I'd still consider it kind of MVP mode. But to drill down on some of the things that I've learned. So some of the things that I've learned over the years have been in the areas of temperament, helping people really identify kind of what their God-given temperament mix and their strengths are. That we all have weaknesses, we all have strengths. So very similar strength finders, Venetian strength finders, just another way to kind of splice that around rather than having this huge, massive list of terms. It's really only about 5 or 6 temperament types across different areas. So bringing that into things that I would do from more of a life coach, and I also did some life coach training in the past, academic life coaching. So it's bringing together those different disciplines of things that I've learned with an emphasis on helping people really identify what they're good at, what they love doing, and diving into it. I still, for me, that aspect of Coach K is kind of a means. It's a means to get to an end. I want to be able to build up. I enjoy life coaching because I enjoy seeing what people gain out of it and where they get. But I love social entrepreneurship coaching. I love working with entrepreneurs. The problem is that they don't have a lot of money and they don't want to pay me, and that's a reality. So the life coaching, the Coach K kind of brand, do stuff. I'm teaching the things that I do to dive into that. So with the last name like Kubicek, which is mispronounced all the time.
I did.
I just stick with K. It's the easiest way. So Coach K was born kind of out of that reality. And it's also a very notable name. There's apparently some other Coach K, right? That's out there. Someone's kind of piggybacking.
Some unknown North Carolinian.
Something. Yeah. Some guy.
Hey, I got to tell you though, I like your Coach K better than the other Coach K. So and
that's what I'm banking on.
Not a big fan. So
even if people that hate him, be like might like me, and those that like him might kind of like me because so it's a win-win.
Yeah. They may confuse. They do a Google search and it may come up with all kinds of interesting things that you've done.
Happened the other day. Some other guy tweeted out about something about some new rookie, and then they tagged me on Facebook on it. And I've been a little quiet with the past few months. Really, past 6 months has been a little quieter. But I've launched the site and have the brand and have some content up there and created some stuff up there to get people going on what those areas and feed that into broader coaching. Actually, so here's maybe a more tactical thing is that getting into coaching, career coaching, life coaching. LinkedIn has launched a whole Pro Finder initiative over the last year or so. So that's been a great source of leads from that side to be able to connect with people. So I'll reach out through that area as well and have done some stuff for LinkedIn, reviewing people's profiles, helping them in their job search, career search stuff. It's it's kind of the hawk in the shoes of things. It's not the most enjoyable, but it's definitely a revenue stream that's available.
Sure.
So if there are people that are saying, I've got skill sets, I want to plug into something, how do I go out and find clients? Like that's a real easy pool to dive into right now is in LinkedIn through their Pro Finder space.
Well, I will include that in the show notes of the episode, and let's drill down a little bit more in the Coach K realm.
Sure.
You said that hadn't been quite as successful as you'd like it to be. I'm sure that's a story of most of us, but. Give me one or two kind of major pain points that you've encountered that maybe our listeners could even speak into that might add some insight or whatever. What are the kind of the two biggest hurdles that you would say you've encountered, maybe even unexpected hurdles?
So part of the reality is that most of self-development industry is driven by women. And just in general, you look at the dollar spend on who buys self-help books, who seeks out coaches and everything. So I really wanted to focus more on a lot of young men, really. So some initial posts and some initial social media strategy of weekly leadership lessons that I would put out there, do some videos. They're somewhat boring, so I need to repackage some of the offering in reality. And I've been doing some other stuff, so I haven't really had the time to really do it because it's been it's a side hustle.
Sure.
But I think that's been kind of the initial thing is I wanted to reach out to 20 to 27-year-old young men to be able to say, what is it you're wired for? How do we go about it? How do you have someone like me, a little bit older in their 30s, that can speak into your life and really challenge you and push you to go after things you really want to go after, and getting them to respond, at least with the messaging the way that I was doing, it wasn't a real solid. The hook wasn't strong enough. I could get them to share images, and I could get them to connect with concepts. And there's one image in particular that I had of like a base jumper, a guy jumping off a cliff with a wingsuit on, and all it said was "Be all in." Mm-hmm. And I got that picture to be shared hundreds of times, by that target market, that demographic. But converting that, share of an image into, now you're interested in having a life coach. You want to have some, having this random dude talk to you about your life and your problems, or just kind of growth. That was the thing that I found that I haven't cracked yet necessarily, and I haven't been hungry enough to really crack it, honestly. And that's why I say, I really find out that entrepreneurs, they're just naturally hungry. They just want to win. And I'm like, winning's good. I'm up for it, but I'm just not really super hungry enough to really pursue it.
Well, you haven't been backed into a corner either. So
no, absolutely.
If your two university jobs suddenly dried up,
exactly,
and you turned around and said, well, all I have is the coaching thing, then that's a completely different world. You found yourself in a completely different world. So what's another, I mean, that's a great, that person's a great obstacle. I mean, I'm sure that's true of so many, that go into the life coaching, business coaching realm. So what's another thing that you've encountered as an obstacle that you would, that thought was a hurdle? It was hard to get over.
Let's see. One of my weaknesses is the, I'll stick with one method too long. I think to be successful in startups, you have to iterate, you have to be testing.
That MVP cycle.
Yeah, and I kind of stuck with the same format for months, and they weren't responding, but I was kind of like, no, I still like it, so I'm just going to keep doing it. Maybe someone will latch on to it eventually.
Dogged.
Rather than just let's say it's stubborn, but it's stubbornness, but it's also laziness. It's kind of like I know this format, I can do it. I don't have to do a whole lot of prep to change it. I didn't have to create a whole lot new because there's a lot of stuff that I either had created in the past or had borrowed from somewhere else and kind of repurposed. So I had a product and I wasn't really willing to change it fast enough, I would say. So I think there definitely could have been ways to find something, and also just general customer development practices, to get together a group of 10 ideal targets. What would you respond to? I never did it. It was just kind of like, this is what I'm doing. I hope you guys, someone will respond to it. And there's just, there wasn't response. But I think I had greater response through some other targeted stuff, not from what I was creating content wise.
So if you did it again, would you have started more with a focus group to see, is there some appetite to pay for these services, or is this the right demographic, or?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, because I think there'd be a way to be able to package stuff and sell coaching to women, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just not a demographic that I personally want to reach out to some degree. I'd much rather reach out because coaching it's a very holistic, open-ended stuff, and you get all kinds of things that pop up because you never know where someone's going to be at and what their headspace is at. So coaching the 20-year-old female demographic just isn't something I really want to do. So I think it's
hard to get in that avatar in your mind.
Well, I think I teach university, right? So I'm surrounded, and there's it depends on the demographics, but there's way more female students than there are male students to some degree now in the past. So I have a lot of students, and I'll provide mentoring for students. I always open that up to students as well. Say, hey, if you want to be mentored, I'll do that, or just after class, you have access to me as a bonus. How great of a bonus, I don't know what that really would be for them sometimes, but as a student, this is what I always tell students, is that you are my legacy, you are my work, right? So if you do bad in your career, I failed. That's it's mostly going to be your fault, but I'll take a little blame, right? If I don't,
it's going to hurt my feelings.
It's going to hurt my feelings. You're going to make me look bad, right? So don't make me look bad. But it's that reality is what are they getting? What's this exchange of value? If I'm going to stand in front of this classroom and teach you guys something, I want to make sure that you're ready to actually rock and roll when you're ready to go out and seek a career.
Right. Let me take a little segue here real quick. If you deal with university students, constantly. Tell me what's the mindset, kind of the millennial mindset, the Gen Z mindset that says, I'm not looking at a career. I'm not looking at something I'm going to do for the rest of my life. I'm looking at what's kind of the next step. And of those, how many of them even discuss with you the idea of starting their own business or doing their own thing?
It's surprising how many, when you ask them who's interested in starting something, a lot of them will raise their hands. Mm-hmm. In just a class that I had this semester at one university that I'm at, I'm teaching, it was almost like 50% of the room, and it wasn't an entrepreneurship class. It was like a sales class. So I think there's more. Now, to fully understand what that means and what it's going to ask of them, sure. I don't think there's a full comprehension of it yet. Right. I think a lot of it is, I think there's a lot of them, when they're thinking of it, they're thinking more of the self-employed. I don't want to be tied to something. I want to have my own flexibility.
Maybe remote work.
I don't want to get up at 9. I don't want to get up at 7 or 8 or even 9. Like I want to get up at 10. Yeah. I think that's part of the mindset for them. Right. But I think there is an openness to it. And it's a mixed bag. You've got students that are scared of life, scared of dating, scared of the opposite sex, and just don't approach anything because they might fail, because they've been handled with kid gloves so much. Then you've got others that are just
helicopter hovering over above.
Yeah, and and my style of teaching is I'm very transparent. I'm very honest about what's going on. So, if I know what we're talking about is boring, I'll stop and be like, "You guys are bored, right? All right, let's switch it up." Or all this stuff in this chapter, you're not going to use half of it. Or I'm going to speak for 60 minutes. You're going to remember 5 minutes of what we talk about today. So whatever that 5 minutes is. Or I ask them, tell me something you remember from last semester, and it's crickets, right? It's just gone. Yeah. I'm like, that is the problem, guys. Like, you need to be able. That's the problem of this system we're swimming in. This is what we're here. So what are you getting out of this exchange of value? So are they entrepreneurial minded? Yeah. Are the token things about millennials being environmentally focused or impact focused or having a master? 100%. It's amazing. It's amazing how quickly that shifted, where students ask, who wants to, even today I was asking them this idea of, who wants to take a job that you really believe in it, and it's everyone. Mm-hmm. Like very few of them are like, I'm out there for the money.
They want to make a difference.
Yeah. They want to make a difference. They want to work on something that they believe in.
Yep.
So I think for socially minded entrepreneurs, like you've got a gold mine of kids out there that are saying, I do not want to do the Fortune 500 thing. I do not want to go the corporate route. It doesn't intrigue me whatsoever. I don't want the benefits. I don't want any of that stuff. I want to wake up and know that I actually am enjoying my life, and I know that it's worth living.
I've got to believe this is a real benefit for them to be, though, in a class taught by somebody that has your mindset. It's like the perfect storm. It's like, they're prepared to receive what you're teaching, and you've been prepared to teach them exactly what they want to hear right now. So it's like these two things have intersected right at the right time. It's like it Frederick Buechner that talks about the world's greatest need. It's when our passions intersect the world's greatest need. That's kind of like our life journey or our life destiny, our life identity, or whatever you want to call it.
Convergence, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, let me drill down just a little bit. I've got some questions we call the life quad section. Yeah. So I want to kind of get down even deeper in Coach K here and
sure.
So give me one person that you follow online that you really respect highly.
Honestly, if I take stock of kind of my own self growth the past few years, it's been pretty low. Really, I do love checking out TED Talks. There's not even, I think, and I kind of pick up bits and pieces of different things, and my students, honestly, students will bring to light some different things. So there hasn't been a lot. I can't point to anything really
more eclectic.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. I'm constantly bringing in content. There's always something coming in, everything, but it's always in little bits and pieces and everything. There's not really been one real solid one. I think probably the most recent one a couple years ago was Creativity Inc. just kind of from the founder of Pixar.
Yep.
And what that, from that book and from listening to some of that stuff, was really the interesting connections with fear. And, he says in his book, like, I viewed my role as CEO or president, of head of this organization, was to eliminate fear. Because if people were afraid, they couldn't be creative. They were going to be limited. They were going to be constrained. And I think that's definitely a shift that I think most larger corporations wield fear.
Right. I mean,
consistently.
It builds,
that's one.
It's this idea of fear is driven often by a lack of trust. And I read a Google article about, they did this massive study in Google about how teams work well together. And it's not necessarily the components of the team. It's, do people sense trust? Do they think that their team members are trustworthy? Mm-hmm. So I appreciate that. So tell me give me a life quote that really is meaningful to you. You're going through your library of life quotes. I can see the gears turning.
Yeah. I don't know if there's not one solid quote, but there's one solid concept that I come back to a lot.
Uh-huh.
And it's just the concept of tension in general. Being able to walk that fine line and not being in one camp or the other exclusively, which is to people in one camp offensive and people in another camp offensive. Here's a great example of it from the social entrepreneur kind of side of things. Is George Washington Carver, the peanut guy, right? So when he was a baby, his mom was a slave, and he was owned by a guy down in the South, and slave traders came and stole him and his mom. He was like 2 weeks old at the time, so stole his mom, stole him. His owner gets on his horse in the middle of the night, chases him down, ends up trading his horse off, which is essentially like turning in the John Deere tractor, right? So turning in his best horse to get back this baby. He couldn't save the mom. He couldn't get her back, but he got the baby back, right? So, he's property, right? But he was raised as a son, and just the impact of this thing. So this guy was living in the South, but he was more aligned with the North and Union mindset. But he was also, owned slaves. So right. There was he treated them as family, and he raised him and his other brother and sent them off to college. And so all the things that he invested in this life. So, he was really hated by everyone around him because he didn't fit either one of those molds for the people that
living in the tension, as you said.
Living in that tension of things. I find there's so many things that we can't be. So I think that's one of the things that really drives me and pushes me is looking at. Part of it's temperament, part of it's just kind of part of it's training. I can really adapt to about any group, anywhere in the world, regardless of socioeconomic status. I've worked and gone to conferences at the Polo Club in Johannesburg with huge foundations where lots of money and special speakers and events, and also gone to some of the most horrific refugee camps and slums in the world as well. And I love both of those places equally as much because they both have their unique challenges and places and realities. So being able to mold yourself to still maintain who you are, but also recognize that to really be impactful to the people you're around requires you to understand where they're coming from and not be like, they threw out some statement that I'm offended by, so all of a sudden I'm going to completely write them off and discount and not, be like, oh, they're assume that they think that way about everything because no one does. Like no one has that much integrity. Right. No one is really that well committed to anything that they don't have. There's always something where people are, from whatever side. So I think so. It's not a quote, but it's just a concept of just maintaining that tension in life.
So tell me, if you could go back a few years to, kind of the pre-Coach K time or pre whatever the latest iteration is of kind of the startup that you have in mind, and what advice would you give yourself that you think would be would be, give me one or two lines of advice that you think would really impact our listeners as they're trying to start something. What's one or two things that lay a foundation, lay a good foundation?
So I think that it's the same challenge because I went business management and then an MBA, but I didn't really have a trade. So I can step into almost any situation and I can make it better. But to really to take one thing, to take one craft, to take one skill, and to just become excellent at it. That's an area of my life. That's an area of my career. There's elements of my career development, my career growth that are missing because I didn't work my way up a chain, which I think that pathway is in some ways going away, but the working up the ladder is going away. Being excellent in some discipline or some field is timeless, and it's always going to be there. And I think that's really important. So,
but something that's not a dying industry.
Something that's not a dying industry for sure. Yeah, to be able to dive into something that's
want
really
anybody
really
to be excellent at working on rotary dial telephones.
Yes, exactly. No, to dive into something. So yeah, there's all these fields, right, that are definitely growing, and really identify what's a true problem. So you talked about trust. The other thing that I've heard are two real fundamental concepts in business: trust and value. And if you don't understand what those two things are and how to communicate that to all your stakeholders, not just your customers, but your partners or people you're trying to recruit to join your startup or whatever, if either one of those two things are unclear or missing, or there's disconnects or they're broken, then your growth is constrained. Your future has a state. You have unlimited to be able to continue to build and maintain trust, and to continue to deliver and identify new value-added offerings that you can connect with.
Well, Evan, I really appreciate your time today. It has once again been a pleasure just reconnecting with you, and our paths seem to continue to cross, through the years.
Absolutely.
And it is. I love it when that happens, and I wish it happened more often. But is there any last piece of advice, anything that came to mind that I haven't asked you about that you want to wrap up? And real quick wrap up, we can finish this.
I think so. Here's a question I think people come across. So there's an archetype of an entrepreneur. There's an archetype of that person with the fire in the belly that whether you give them good advice or not, it doesn't really matter if they're going to do it anyways. Those are the type of people that just let them go. They're going to make they generally learn from failure, and they never think they failed anyways. They just eliminated options. It's just the mindset of that. It's just the mindset of the person. So when you come across those people in your life, grab a hold and hold on for the ride, because they're going to go, but they're going to leave kind of a wake. Yeah. And it's your job to kind of calm the wake behind them.
Maybe a little carnage.
There'll be some carnage along the way, and they'll burn some stuff down. So if you're not that person, or you don't have the people in your group necessarily, I find that the right team, as you mentioned before, the right team with trust builds that courage and can create some of the things. So while you might not have the confidence to pursue something on your own, it's just like with anything when you work out. When you work out with someone else, you run a little farther, you put a little more weight on the rec. There's this element of human pride or competition that just is naturally initiated. So you may not be an entrepreneur, but you're interested in an idea and you just don't have the guts to do it. Bring someone else in. That being said, someone has to be the chief.
Yep.
Someone has to be able to one that says, I'm going to pull the final trigger, and I need your support for me to help me get there. But you can kind of do that together, because I think that's one thing for me. Always looking back, is if I took the time to build a little more team around me, I think I wouldn't stall out as fast or as quickly on different initiatives, whether it's this one, past ones, future ones, because I know I'm not that. I don't have that fire in the belly. Right. I need some of the people to come along with, that can match pace with people.
It is hard. I mean, it's difficult. That's a rough road, and the solo road is a tough road. It's not impossible, but it's much tougher if you're running alone. But Evan, thank you so much for just taking the time tonight. And Rising Tide crowd, I'm going to tell you that this is not the last time you're going to hear from Coach K. He's going to, from time to time, speak into things that come up and just add some of his wisdom and the years of experience that he's had to speak into things. And I'm going to call on him from time to time just to add feedback and maybe to come touch base with us on maybe even specific topics as they come about, as they arise in our tide. So, guys, now it's your turn to speak into the pain points that were mentioned in this episode, and it will be on our listener feedback link on the tab on the website. And we'd love for you to fill out that form. And Evan, once again, thanks for joining us tonight, and we really appreciate having you around. And guys, always remember that all boats rise in a rising tide.
Absolutely.